Hello, podcast listeners. You are now listening to the Coffee, Health, and Science podcast. I'm your host, Jordan River, and I want to thank you for tuning in today. Before we get started, I urge you to share the Coffee, Health, and Science podcast. Spread the show. It's how we grow. Make sure you're subscribed so you catch every episode, and give us a good rating and review. It helps us climb the charts. Today, we are still on this exercise kick. Very excited to have a repeat guest from Corepump.com and from so much more work in the field of exercise and physiology. We have Corepump Sam on the line. What's up, Sam?
Hey, Jordan. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. How are you? Thank you for coming back on the show.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. I'm excited to speak to you, as a longtime exercise specialist, exercise physiologist. You're the perfect person to talk to about today's episode topic, injury in the world of exercise. I know that's your kind of specialty, one of the reasons you created the Corepump. People can go and check out the last episode with Sam, check out his product at corepump.com. But really, I want to broaden it to just kind of everybody in the gym, at home, using their bodies, and how to exercise without banging up our body and then needing that recovery time, getting out of shape. And, these injuries can be a big kind of detriment to our overall health and wellness, can they not?
That's right. That's exactly right. A lot of times we go to the gym with a couple of goals in mind. Usually it's either to lose excess fat, gain more muscle, or get out of a troubled area like an injury spot. And a lot of times people kind of mix and match the wrong modalities of exercise. Just because more importantly, they just don't know, so they'll just kind of YouTube or just take their best guess. But a lot of times injuries are the cause. That's why you see a lot of chiropractic offices and massage therapy clinics right next door to a gym, just because they just know that it's inevitable that someone's going to injure themselves by just improper form or technique, or just unwise lifting practices that will ultimately injure them. And unfortunately, they're typically chronic injuries that happen from those experiences.
Mm-hmm. Can throw off your whole health and wellness world. You could be laid up. Obviously, knocking you out of your exercise regimen is bad enough. But yeah, just kind of forcing sedentary lifestyles from these injuries is a real thing that I see over and over, And obviously, sometimes it can get even worse. You get prescribed some opiates. We've all heard that story. It can really be life-changing, just one simple injury in sport or in the gym. So, one thing that I've really kind of matured into has been a very disciplined stretching regimen. I feel that stretching and flexibility is incredibly underrepresented in today's modern exercise world. And I assume that is a big contributor to whether or not you're going to hurt something when you go to perform, right?
That's absolutely right. A lot of it is, and we discussed this in that previous podcast, but, people really need to dedicate their time to not just strength training and cardiovascular conditioning, but also to stretching, flexibility program, and just probably even more important, and each of the four pillars are very key principles in exercise as far as complete programming, but core training is also extremely important. And what the core does and core is involved in flexibility and strength training and cardio. Mm-hmm. But without a good core foundation, it's just one of those things where the body is it's not optimized, and people that have ever ruptured a disc in their back, compromising their essentially the core strength of their body, know that every movement that they do, even sneezing, is really debilitating. So flexibility, absolutely. And to touch on flexibility, a lot of people, they feel that stretching before their workout is important as well as afterwards, but a good warm up prior to exercise and then stretching at the end is really kind of the way to do it, because people that stretch prior to their exercises, they actually limit their potential output during their exercise as well as in their activities. So that is also would make them prone to injury as well.
Oh, that's fascinating. So you're saying a nice, not a stretching session, that's what you'd recommend after, but a nice, slow, easy warm up to get your body into kind of activity mode.
Yeah, just to increase the core temperature, to get the blood pressure. You want those vessels dilated so you get a lot more blood flow. And it also just kind of gets things nice and loose, kind of like warming up taffy before you shape it.
Right, right. Okay, that makes sense. I like that. And then a post-exercise stretch. Now, I imagine, and I know this is the case from talking to you, our kind of metal, weight-oriented, critical workout systems here in the West, those are some of the most injury-prone ones, right? I mean, when you're talking about building your core, obviously, you have your specific product, but these are full-body kind of holistic exercises as opposed to strengthening all these glamour muscles, if you will, through a couple specific weight training motions. Is that an accurate assessment? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the movements, and more specifically, you'll see movements such as like Olympic weightlifting, those types of lifts that are often seen in gym practices. Those are the ones that really get people injury prone, and you'll see someone doing, for example, like the deadlift with weight that it may or may not be appropriate. But what happens is you'll see them rep after rep doing these lifts incorrectly. And it's usually the last couple of reps right before they reach fatigue is when the body just basically says, I'm shutting off because I'm going to go into an injury pattern. And that's when the person typically will either strain or actually truly injure themselves by tearing.
Right. And that can, like I said, that can be absolutely devastating. So why don't we get into the ones that you would recommend, the types of exercises just all over the gym that you would say are the, I guess, safest, the exercises that are
Sure.
least prone to injury. I know you mentioned like things in the water are great, but just across the board, what do you recommend?
I'm a huge fan of calisthenics, believe it or not. It's one of those things where, our bodies, we have to be adjusted and familiar with how we move around in space and gravity. And, all of the exercises that you can do by loading a barbell or plates or whatever you do, it's one of those things where there's a lot of modifications for people. Let's say you can't perform a full or strict pull up. Well, there's a lot of other ways that you can do the pull up just using your body weight, and they're simple. And what I like most of all is you can do them anywhere in a gym, in your home, your office. So it doesn't limit you to a space like a gym. Specifically, the resistance that you're going to be lifting, because it's your body weight, one, you're familiar with that weight because it's you, and two, as you get stronger, you actually move in space and gravity better, more efficiently. So I'm a fan of the calisthenic type of weightlifting, which is going to be your body weight.
That is such a good point. Moving through space, movement training. I was a big fan of the Ido Portal videos for a while. That is so important because when you're standing solitary in front of a mirror at the gym doing those curls with big metal plates, it is very stiffening and it doesn't encourage that movement. So I totally vibe with that. What do you think about things like, what are some of the machines that you can do, the more holistic machines? Like I've heard rowing machines are good and don't cause injury, or what are some machines that you would recommend?
Well, the rowing machine, if done properly, it's an excellent exercise. It's almost like a seated deadlift. I mean, it's a really good power move that's it does translate to life, because instead of pushing back on a rower, you can imagine pushing through the ground as if you're swinging a golf club, or really anything that requires powering through the ground. So the rowing activity, I feel it's excellent. There are plenty of people that row incorrectly, which is why they'll start feeling that strain in their low back. And a lot of people, if they just spend a few minutes just timing their rowing patterns properly, it's a very effective move. So I am a huge fan of the rowing machine for sure.
But you got to do those right. Just about any machine, right? It's about that form. I can totally imagine that though. When you said that putting the stress on the low back, I could see that in the motion.
Yeah, a lot of people, you'll see them, they'll bring the handle forward and they'll bring their whole torso forward. And then instead of driving back with their legs with a nice straight back, they'll actually pull back with their low back. So you can kind of see where this is. The other thing, though, is with rowing, a lot of times the resistance is either fan based or water driven. So there is an isokinetic or a continuously adjusting resistance,
Right.
which does lead more to a safer resistance as opposed to rowing with, you know, I have seen people doing rowing with like a back row on a stack of plates. And so that's very dangerous if done incorrectly, for sure.
That makes sense with what you were saying as well. All these types of motions, the resistance bands, the core pump, moving through water. These are all like you said, kind of alternating resistance or progressive resistance. There's a lot of different ways you could articulate that, but everyone knows what that is, and you can imagine why it's less dangerous overall to your body and less damaging overall to your body.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is, when you're using traditional strength training modalities, like barbells or dumbbells and machines that use weighted plates, there isn't any sort of fluctuation in resistance of the resistance itself. However, your rep range, there's fluctuations all over the board. So when you're in the starting position of, let's say, a shoulder press, you're definitely weaker than when you're almost at full extension, but the weight is exactly the same. So having that accommodating or that variable resistance that changes through your rep range, where it gets increasingly more as you get stronger and increasingly less as you're in a weaker rep range, that for me, that's the only way I would recommend strength training, unless there's absolutely nothing else that you have. And then I say, lift smart, lift correctly, but more importantly, just use the body weight, because that's the same thing. The resistance doesn't change, but it's going to change as you get stronger, and that's going to be that's your earth suit. So that's always going to be constant, as opposed to putting more and more load on your shoulders, like in a back squat. And when it's off your shoulders, you still suffer from all that compression that you just gave to yourself. And if there's any sort of torsional movement during that squat, you're going to risk injuring your back, your hips, your knees. I mean, there's so many areas of the body that aren't meant to twist with that load underneath you. So again, calisthenics and variable resistance training is really the in my opinion, the way to go.
Well, clearly there's some real solid logic behind that. Let's go the other direction though. What have you found to be the most injury prone exercises? Let's say we can't stay out of the gym and we just need to get those weights in. But which ones have you seen, really, really be improperly used or just most injury prone?
I've seen a lot of the exercises that, for example, you've seen like people doing military presses with 225 above the head, and doing exercises in that position where they're loading that joint in a very weird angle, because your body typically, when you're lifting something overhead, it's not, your back isn't stabilized against the seat, and typically you're not seated like that unless you're a mechanic needing to lift an engine into a very small space where you have to be as strict as possible. But typically when we lift high loads, we're actually lifting from the ground to the top of the hand. So if you're lifting something heavy, that's why Olympic weightlifting, when done properly, is such an advantageous move, because you actually recruit the entire body to take a load from the ground to above your head. So when you cut that into smaller bite-sized pieces, like a seated shoulder press, you can see where a lot of that injury is going to load just in the shoulder joint. But in real life, it usually goes through the feet, all the way up through the glutes, all the way up to the top, to where you're actually pressing it above your head.
Whoa.
Having said that, the injury prone exercises are actually the most dynamic exercises that you see. So you could see something like a power clean to an overhead press, for example. there's a lot of movement and coordination of that same resistance, whether it's on the ground, the midlift, or above the head. So the reason why the injuries happen is because really primarily technique, improper technique, and people really trying to lift that 1 rep max sooner or before their time, because they may not have lifted properly enough to be able to load up to the amount that they're attempting for that day. So I would say really those super dynamic lifts like the Olympic lifts would be more injury prone than anything.
Love that breakdown. What do you think of kettlebells?
I love him. I mean, I'm a huge fan. Many years of advanced kettlebell training, where one of those things where you can imagine swinging a cannonball with a handle on it between your legs at an angle, and if done improperly, how that could really ruin your day,
Sure.
especially when they bang into a shin or something like that. Kettlebells were really designed with the idea of moving the whole body as one movement. So when you're taking a kettlebell from the ground, swinging it between your legs, bringing it up to a press in reverse, the whole body has to move, in synchrony with everything, because it's a dance of weight going up to the bottom, from the bottom to the top. Now, people that take kettlebells, and one, they don't have the proper form or technique, and two, they're just trying to figure it out. And there's a lot of different ranges of weights with kettlebell, and people always want to go to the heavier side. Definitely, you could see where there could definitely be injuries with kettlebell training, especially since kettlebell training is almost never static. It's always using the entire kinetic chain to bring that kettlebell from one position to the next.
So a very powerful and effective one, but again, you got to do it right and make sure not to slam.
Yeah.
Make sure not to slam your own kneecap, of course.
Yes. Yeah. Kettlebell
Sounds fun.
training is definitely awesome if you know what you're doing. So it's basically like nunchucks. And so I always tell people, if you start out with nunchucks, I know you want to get to the wood or the metal ones, but go with the Nerf ones first until you can do that so perfectly. Then upgrade to the wood, then eventually the metal. But a lot of people want the Bruce Lee look first, and so what do? They go out there and start whipping it around, and they come back with pretty funny stories.
Yeah, you get hit in the head, man. That's not fun. You get a
That's
black
right.
eye.
That's exactly right.
This has been a wonderful exercise exploration, man. We got to make room for recovery here at the end.
Yeah.
I could go deeper into injuries, but I want to make sure we give enough time. You know, you injure yourself, you're told a million different things. We know the home remedies, the RICE, rest, ice, compression, elevation, yada yada. Overall, when we're taking a look at recovering from an injury, what do you suggest? What are we missing? What should we focus on?
Well, for me, when I look at recovery, and I have spent bazillion hours in that space, for me it's all about the endocrine system. And the reason why I say that is because if we can get our body to, when it's no longer the fight mode, right, and it's time to rest and recover, it's important that the rest and recovery state is done effectively. When people just say, in order to recover, go to sleep. Well, there's a lot of people that don't sleep appropriately. Their sleeping is just not effective. So they even wake up tired, which is a big indication that they're not resting properly. So for me, I like to address the endocrine system first, which, rest is definitely a part of it. Believe it or not, exercise is a huge part of balancing and maintaining the hormone system.
Mm-hmm.
And also a huge part is going to be your nutrition. You can't eat a whole bunch of processed foods, sugars, low fat diets, all that stuff, overeating, and then going into an exercise and thinking you're going to rest. And I do want to add, like alcohol consumption and other things like that really screw up that endocrine system is a part of it. This is why a balanced diet, exercise, and sleep regimen is so important. It's crucial for that endocrine system. Some biohacks, though, that I could recommend for helping reset that endocrine system
Oh yeah.
would be something simple like contrast therapy. And what that means is, let's say after a hard day of work or even working out, you enjoy a nice cold shower or a nice cold ice bath or something where you get your body, you almost shock it down, and you almost repress it. So what you're doing is you're internalizing that cold. The body is now coming down because it can't fight in the cold. It has to almost come down to a very still motion, and that way your body can almost reset. And people that do stuff like that, they find their sleeping is so much deeper. They're able to get their REM cycles in. On contrast of cold therapy, you can do things like hot therapy, which would be obviously sitting in a warm bath, or what my favorite would be is enjoying a nice infrared sauna treatment. And so now you can, and so I created a thing called the Cryo Circuit. And what that involved is first off, you go into a cryo chamber or a cold plunge, and then you come out and you do movement. And I would have people doing the accommodating resistance on my machine, and then they'd go sit in the infrared sauna. And now you got the healing wavelengths of the sun penetrating the skin, detoxifying the body, and then you go right back into the cold again. And you repeat that. Essentially, I called it the recovery car wash, because you really just kind of go from one step to the other. And when you leave, you are zenned out. I mean, you feel like you are Buddha. And you also, all those aches, pains, the inflammation that you came in with are completely gone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would have people come in limping and they would walk out normally. And it was just purely through that contrast therapy. So you could biohack it with doing things like cold and warm.
That is right up our alley, man. Those heat and cold shock proteins that are created during those processes.
Yes.
You're touching on a lot of stuff that we've kind of dug into the science a little bit before on other podcasts, but you created your own little, I love that. The car wash, the circuit, just keep running through hot, cold, and a little bit of exercise in between, essentially.
Yes, and the
crazy.
Exercise, the important part with the exercise, if I had a lap pool in that cryo circuit, that I would have actually have used that. So you go cold, swim a lap, get in the hot, go back to cold, swim a lap. But with that Corepump, it's vertical swimming. So, and the reason why we do that is because I don't want to induce more inflammation to the body. So I want it moving with constriction of the skeletal system, but without inflaming it, getting that cytokine response kicking out there and almost reversing what you do. So you really want to get your body through a nice rest, get the vagus nerve stimulated. You're massaging the vagus nerve, and what that's going to do is incite basically a nice recovery process to where you don't have to wait to go to bed to recover. It actually begins before you go to sleep, and then you sleep deeply and you wake up and you're like, oh, I felt like I slept a million years, but it felt amazing. You feel rejuvenated.
Incredible. I am absolutely going to reincorporate. I was big on the cold showers. I've been slacking. I'm going to reincorporate this contrast therapy. I've never heard it put like that. And when you Google it, you're right. That is exactly the hot and cold therapy, which I just love.
It's awesome.
Man, I didn't expect that. And I'm very, very impressed. So that's all we had. Oh, there was one more thing, actually. There was one more interesting thing I needed to run by you here. You're going to like this. Now, this is the Coffee Health and Science podcast, and we talk about coffee. I had made mention to an article. It may have been on our last episode, but I had to follow up with it. I mentioned how there was a study on injurious falls, and they did a study on the elderly, and if their coffee consumption affected their risk of falls, injurious falls, and falls with fractures. And they did a study on, 800 individuals across UK and Spain. So a pretty small test, but man, across the board, they saw a reduced risk of injurious and fractured falls with those who are consuming caffeine on a regular basis, supposedly due to the reaction time. If you can get your hands up before a fall, you're not going to fracture as bad, and that's supposedly what they're attributing this to. And so the conclusion, you can find this at PubMed. The article is titled Habitual Coffee Consumption and Risks of Falls in 2 European cohorts of older adults. And the conclusion was that habitual coffee consumption is associated with lower risk of falling in older adults in Spain and the United Kingdom. So pretty incredible. And it was an interesting thought I wanted to run by you, which is reaction time might, especially, you can think about an older individual who's falling. Reaction time might help you in that injury, and maybe not make it so bad if you can get your hands up in time. It was a crazy study.
That is very fascinating. I could see how that stimulant would increase reaction time. Yeah, I'm definitely going to check out that study.
I'm shooting it over to you. I'll shoot it over to you right now because it has a bunch of citations.
And we're doing pretty extensive research with a company called Exos in Phoenix, which is a mega company. And, I'm in the research department, and that would be a very cool study to almost kind of piggyback on what they do, because you'll hear people on either side of the fence, too much stimulants, too much coffee, adrenal fatigue, all that stuff.
Right, absolutely.
But my argument is adrenal fatigue. You can't point the finger at one thing. It's a lot of stuff: diet, poor sleep, non-exercise. There's a lot of stuff that can be included with adrenal fatigue, not just having your daily coffee.
100%, man, you nailed it. And it's important to get off that caffeine if you need to recover from those adrenals, but to throw out the disease prevention of coffee, like you said, when maybe you can incorporate it in a little more healthy way. Yeah, I just shot you the article. It's an interesting one. I mean, I geek out on this stuff, right? There's a new coffee and health article out every week. But the reduction in fall injury, that is just fascinating to me.
Yeah, I would love to see what the basis on that is, just because I think we talked about it before where, they're finding that the falls in the elderly are contributed really by it's not the lack of strength, it's the lack of power. And so for me, power and proprioception, which is your awareness in space, I think that with if you increase that connectivity between that neuromuscular junction, so that when your proprioceptors say, "Whoa, this doesn't feel right," your body almost turns into a position where, okay, I misstepped, and so I caught myself. Where if you have more of a gap in that connection, now that person's on the floor with a broken hip. So I can see that coffee may be that catalyst that they might need, so that their reaction time is on point.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me. I like what you said, though. Less about strength, more about power and power and speed, right? So that's interesting.
That's right. Yeah, power is nothing to do with weight at all. It's purely how quick can I take a jug of milk from the ground to the top. It's all about velocity. And so when you're walking, you're actually doing mini power moves. Now, if I misstep, that's with someone elderly, that's a mega power move. And so having those power moves ready to go, not consciously, but one of those things where the body is just ready to go, is going to really save, I think, millions of people from injury-related falls, which unfortunately, a lot of it ends up in death.
Right. Yeah, exactly. This isn't just, it's not like taking a spill on the black ice when you're 30. When you get up there, this is serious stuff. So.
Absolutely.
Sam, we just blew through this podcast, man. It was a great one. It really flies by with you. I appreciate you, man. This was a great episode.
Awesome. Well, anytime you need my 2 cents, I am here for you, man.
Absolutely. Corepump.com is where you can find everything that you are working on. You got Instagrams, or is it's all at corepump.com, right?
Yeah, it's all in Corepump, and we're going to be coming out actually with 3 brand new studies on the Corepump machine. One with burn victims, one with comparing Corepump circuit training to traditional circuit training, and really, comparing, not saying this is better than that, but really showing that with the smallest amount of the most effective prescription of exercise, what can you truly accomplish? And for me, I aim to prove that you can really do a good job for your health in about 10 minutes with hitting all 4 pillars of fitness.
Oh, I love that.
And so for me, it's one of those things where if it's achievable, most people will actually do it. If you start tapping into their time or making it inconvenient, you lost the majority of people.
100%, man. I love that. I love it. We'll stay tuned for that. Corepump.com, everybody. You'll hear more Sam here on the Coffee, Health, and Science podcast. That's all for today, though. This is Sam and Jordan signing off, saying have an extraordinary day out there. We'll see you next time on the Coffee, Health, and Science podcast.